Hello, Lego over here, and we're back today on F1 2020, and as you can see, we're here in Azerbaijan for another track guide. As always, we'll be doing one lap at full speed, one lap in detail, and then I'll show you the setup. That was the lap then, and as you can see, it's a 1:37.6. Definitely some room for improvement, but still a decent lap. And now we're going to go in more detail with that lap. Starting the lap now, going into turn 1, we want to brake just before the 100-meter board. On the entry, use all of the entry curb. Miss the inside curb, but get close to it. And on the exit, use as much of the track as possible. For turn 2, braking just after that blue sign goes out of view. Brake in a straight line, and on the apex, miss the inside curb but get close, and on the exit, use as much of the track as possible, get very close to that outside wall on the exit. But now we head down this DRS straight into turn 3, brake just before that 100-meter board, and on the entry, use the entry curb. Miss the inside curb once again, like those previous two corners. On the exit, use all of the curb, a bit of oversteer, but all okay. Into turn 4, brake just before the 50-meter board, and miss the inside curb once again. And on the exit, straight line to the car to avoid oversteer. Into these two corners then, you want to look for that tree, brake just after that goes out of view, and heading into the first left, take a normal racing line. As you turn in for the right, use a slight amount of the brakes, miss the inside curb, and get very close to the outside curb, but don't use that curb at all. Into this corner then, brake around 10 to 15 meters before the 50-meter board. And going into the corner, it's very important that you use all of the apex curb. The exit tightens dramatically, so it's very easy to touch the wall. Into the castle section, this is the most narrow section out of any track on the F1 calendar, and it's very easy to get wrong here. So starting off, brake at that 50-meter board, and we're going to take this nice and slowly and go in detail with this. For the first apex, get very close to the inside wall. At this stage, using all of the inside curb, don't use any of the brake or the throttle at this point of the track here. And on the exit here, get as close as possible to that wall. Right now, we still can't see the next corner, so you really have to know the track well through here. Use that exit curb as well. And into this corner, get as close as possible to that wall to set yourself up for the next right-hander, which we still can't see. And as we head uphill now, brake just before the black box. Only now can we start to see the corner just about there. And very easy to slide the car, so make sure you keep the car under control here. Very difficult set of corners. Use a slight amount of the brakes as you turn in for the second corner of that chicane, the left-hander. And as we exit into the two flat-out left-handers, easy flat, and into this downhill section, brake just after that curb ends there. The track falls away here, so it's very easy to miss the braking. Start braking at the middle of the track because that eventually does become the racing line because the wall protrudes to the left towards the track. And going into the corner then, you want to use as much of the inside curb as possible. It will unsettle the car, but it's the fastest way through the corner. It does make the exit quite difficult, so you just have to try your best not to oversteer. But heading downhill into this final braking zone, you want to start braking just after you pass that marshal on the right side of the track. And going into the corner, missed the inside curve. We missed the apex a little bit, so we did lose a little bit of time. But on the exit, use all of the track. And now through the two fastest corners of the track, I like to use the inside curve for the left, but miss it on the right. Just keep the line smooth. You want to only be gaining speed through those two corners. You don't want to be losing speed. And finish off your lap at Baku. Onto the setup now. We're going to go in detail for each component of this setup, starting off with the aero. And I was using 3/8 wings. It felt quite nice for me. I tried using 2/8 for that extra straight line speed, but I simply couldn't get that extra grip in the corners, so I just needed to use 3/8 for that extra front end grip. And then for the rear wing, 8 because there's lots of traction zones and low speed corners and 90-degree corners and chicane type corners on this track, and it just asks a lot from the rear tires, so it's very important that we have enough grip at the rear, enough grip and downforce so that we can push the car to the limit. For the transmission, using 50-53, 50% on throttle, pretty normal, 53% off throttle for that entry and mid-corner rotation. If you're getting any instability on the entry or even mid-corner, then try raising the off-throttle differential by increments of 1% until that instability is gone. You will lose some rotation if you do that, but in turn you will get a more stable car. For the suspension geometry, using pretty normal settings here, front camber is -2.5 and rear camber -2, and minimum toe, pretty normal as I said. For the suspension, we're using 111 on the suspension springs. This is where most of the rotation comes from in the setup. And to counteract that, we're using 1/6 on the anti-roll bars, so much less aggressive settings there with the anti-roll bars. So the suspension settings are for that rotation, and the anti-roll bars are to keep the car stable, essentially. And if you're getting a bit of oversteer, especially on the exits of corners, then try lowering that rear suspension, but it did feel pretty good for me. For the ride height, we're using 3 on the front, 3 on the rear, same setting for both. I might experiment with the ride height a bit later, but for now, this did feel pretty good for me, so that's what I stuck with. For the brakes, using 100% brake pressure and 50% brake bias, as always. And as always, if you're struggling with rear locking in the braking zones, then try raising the brake bias up by 1 or 2%, or maybe even more if you really need to. And finally, for the tire pressures, using minimum as always. I like this setup quite a lot. Obviously, always, if you need to make changes, tweaks, fine-tune it to your driving style, and hopefully you can get this setup to work for you. That's going to be it for this track guide here at Baku today. If you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, as I post F1 content 3 times per week, Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.